For years, he told me we couldn't afford a vacation, that our finances were too tight. Then one day, I accidentally opened his credit card bill and saw charges for a 5-star resort in Paris. My blood ran cold. He hadn't gone on any business trips this year. That night, I casually said, "I'd love to go to Paris someday." He laughed, "Maybe if we save up." I pulled out the bill and smirked, "Or I could just ask your mistress how she liked it." His smile vanished, and he knew he was caught. I don't know how to start this because my hands are still shaking. My heart is pounding so hard I can hear it in my ears. My whole body feels hot, but my fingers are ice cold. I don't even know if I should cry or scream or break something. I found out my husband, my partner of 15 years, has been cheating on me. And I found out in the worst possible way. For years, he told me we were struggling financially. It was always something. Bills. Mortgage. Repairs. We need to be smart with our money, he'd say. We're not young anymore. We can't waste money on things like trips. I believed him. I put my dreams on hold because I thought we were in this together. I can't even tell you how many times I brought up taking a real vacation. Not just a road trip or a weekend at a cabin, but something big. A real getaway. Something for us. I wanted to see the world. I wanted to make memories while we still had the energy to enjoy them. But every single time, he shut me down. Maybe next year. Flights are crazy expensive. You know we can't afford that. I didn't argue. I trusted him. He handled the money. He always had. I'm not dumb, I have my own income, but he was always the one making sure the bills were paid, the savings account was growing, the credit cards were under control. That was his thing. I didn't question it. Until today. I wasn't even snooping. I wish I had been snooping. I wish I could say I had some gut feeling, some premonition that made me look into it. But no. I found out by accident. There was a credit card bill sitting on the kitchen counter. It was open, half buried under the newspaper. I don't know why I looked. Maybe I was just going to move it. Maybe I was planning to throw it away. But then I saw a charge that didn't make sense. Hotel Plaza Athene. At first, it didn't even register. My brain skimmed over it like it was just another line item. But something about it made me pause. Maybe it was the total. $6,389.72. Maybe it was the fact that I didn't recognize the name. Maybe it was some deep, animal instinct clawing at the back of my brain. So I looked it up. And my blood ran cold. A 5-star luxury hotel. In Paris. I stared at my phone screen, my mouth going dry. That couldn't be right. That had to be a mistake. I checked the dates. It wasn't a mistake. It was just 3 months ago. I don't even remember him going anywhere. No work trip. No weekend away. No guy's trip or family emergency. He had been home. Or at least, he had told me he was home. I couldn't breathe. I sat down at the kitchen table and went through the rest of the statement, my hands shaking so hard I could barely scroll. A Michelin star restaurant. $1,042. A Cartier boutique. $780.50. Wine bars. Cafes. Even a goddamn horse-drawn carriage ride. My stomach turned. I flipped through more statements, looking for anything else I had missed. And I found plenty. Designer boutiques. High-end jewelry stores. Restaurants we would never spend that kind of money on. I felt sick. And then the realization hit me like a freight train. For years, he told me we couldn't afford a vacation. But he could afford a vacation with someone else. I don't even know how long I sat there, staring at those charges. My hands were gripping the paper so tightly it crumpled at the edges. I tried to breathe. I tried to think. Who the hell was he taking to Paris? The first thought that ran through my head was, no. Maybe it's not what it looks like. Maybe it really was a work thing. So I checked his emails. I don't even feel guilty saying that. He lost his right to privacy the second he used our money to wine and dine some other woman in another country. And guess what? It wasn't a work trip. It wasn't anything official. But there was a flight confirmation. His name. And hers. Her name was right there, next to his. Round trip. First class. Paris. I swear, I could feel my heartbeat in my throat. I didn't even recognize the name. I sat there, staring at it, my vision blurring. Who was she? Someone from work? Someone I knew? I needed answers. But more than that, I needed to see his face when he realized he was caught. So I waited. I waited for him to come home like everything was normal. And when we sat down for dinner, I played my part. I smiled. I made his favorite meal. I poured him a drink. Then, halfway through the meal, I said, I'd love to go to Paris someday. I watched him. He barely looked up. Just gave a little laugh and said, yeah, maybe if we save up. I reached under the table, pulled out the credit card bill, and slid it toward him. Or I could just ask your mistress how she liked it. He froze. His fork hovered in the air. His face went completely blank. Then, just for a second, I saw it, the tiniest flicker of panic in his eyes. I had him. He didn't speak. Didn't blink. Didn't breathe. I sat there, watching him, waiting. My heart was pounding so hard I could barely hear anything else, but I kept my face calm. Steady. Unshaken. His fingers twitched, tightening around his fork like he wanted to squeeze it into dust. His jaw clenched. Finally, he swallowed hard and let out a small, forced laugh. What is this? He tried to play dumb. I almost admired the effort. It's your credit card bill, I said, tilting my head. You left it on the counter. I figured you wouldn't mind if I looked. He didn't move. So, tell me, I continued, tapping the paper, what was it like? The view from the Eiffel Tower? The Michelin star meals? The horse-drawn carriage ride? Was it magical? His eyes darted to the bill, then back to me. It's not what you think. I laughed. Actually laughed. Oh! So you didn't spend nearly $7,000 on a 5-star hotel in Paris? You didn't fly first class? You didn't charge fancy restaurants and jewelry to a credit card that, oh, wait for it, is in my name. His face paled. I watched the excuses race through his mind, watched him scramble to find a way out. It was a business thing, he said. I don't. My voice came out sharp, shaking. Don't insult me. Don't lie. I saw the flight confirmation. I saw her name. You didn't go for business. You went with her. Who the hell is she? Silence. That was answer enough. I pushed my chair back and stood up. My legs felt unsteady, but I wasn't going to let him see that. I want the truth. Right now. His nostrils flared. His hands were balled into fists on the table. His whole body was stiff, like he was trying to keep himself from snapping. And then he did. You want to know the truth? He hissed. His voice was low, bitter. Fine. You want to know who she is? She's someone who doesn't treat me like a paycheck. She's someone who doesn't nag me every damn day about vacations and saving money and how I don't do enough for you. She appreciates me. I blinked. He kept going. You sit here acting like I've been punishing you by saying no to stupid vacations, like I've been torturing you by making smart financial decisions. You want to know why I took her to Paris? Because she actually makes me feel like I deserve it. Unlike you. The words hit me like a slap. I didn't even realize I was gripping the edge of the table until my knuckles turned white. So that's it? My voice was eerily calm. I don't appreciate you enough, so you took our money and spent it on another woman? Our money. He let out a sharp laugh. No. My money. You act like you're some victim, but who pays the bills? Who makes sure you have a roof over your head? You wouldn't even have a life without me. I saw red. I reached for the bill and held it up in front of him. This card? The one you used to spoil your little mistress? It's in my name. So you tell me, genius, who actually paid for your trip? His mouth opened. Closed. He knew I was right. And for the first time that night, I saw something break in him. The anger was still there, but underneath it, panic. He had been so sure of himself, so sure that he had everything under control. But he had messed up. Badly. I let the bill drop onto the table. You're a liar. A thief. And worst of all, you're so damn pathetic that you can't even admit you got caught. He pushed back his chair suddenly, the legs screeching against the floor. His hands were shaking now too. You're making a mistake, he said. No, I whispered. You already did. And then, his phone buzzed. It was on the table, face up. And I saw it. Her name. My stomach twisted, but I wasn't going to let him see me crack. Slowly, I reached for his phone. He moved fast, grabbed it before I could, but it didn't matter. I already knew. She doesn't even know you're married, does she? His entire face changed. That was it. That was the moment I knew for sure. He wasn't just a cheating bastard. He had been lying to her too. He snatched the phone off the table so fast it nearly tipped his drink over. His face was stone cold now, his breathing uneven. I leaned back in my chair, watching him. She doesn't know, does she? He didn't answer. I let out a slow breath. My hands weren't shaking anymore. Something inside me had snapped, burned out, gone cold. So let me get this straight, I said, tapping my fingers on the table. You've been telling me for years that we don't have money for vacations. Meanwhile, you've been taking your mistress, who, by the way, has no idea you're married, to FNG Paris. And you used my credit to do it. He still didn't speak. I tilted my head. Are you gonna say something, or are you just gonna sit there looking like a deer in headlights? His grip on his phone tightened. His leg bounced under the table. I could practically hear the gears in his head grinding. I could tell what he was thinking. Lie? Deflect? Fight? He chose none of the above. Instead, he stood up. Where are you going? I asked. I need some air, he muttered, shoving his phone into his pocket. I laughed. You don't get to walk away from this. He didn't stop. He grabbed his jacket and moved toward the door like I wasn't even there. But as soon as he reached for the handle, BZZZT, his phone vibrated again. And I don't know what made me do it, pure rage, maybe, but before he could react, I lunged forward and ripped it right out of his pocket. Give me that. He reached for it, but I dodged him. Sit. The F. Down. I growled. He hesitated. Then, slowly, he stepped back, his hands clenched into fists at his sides. I looked down at the screen. It was her again, but this time, there was a preview of the message. Hey baby, are you okay? I'm worried. You left so fast. Let me know when you're safe. I stared at it. My mind went blank for a second. Then it hit me. He wasn't just cheating on me. He had been with her today. Where were you this afternoon? I asked, my voice eerily calm. Don't do this, he muttered. Answer the FNG question. He swallowed. Looked away. I was at work. I laughed so hard I nearly dropped the phone. Wow. So, even now, with the evidence literally right in front of you, you're gonna keep lying. His jaw tightened. Give me the damn phone. I ignored him. My thumb hovered over the screen. Then, before I could stop myself, I swiped up and unlocked it. No passcode. Idiot. I tapped into his messages. And what I saw made my stomach turn. There were hundreds of messages. Some from today. Some from yesterday. Some from weeks, months ago. Flirty texts. Pet names. Long, late-night messages about how much he missed her, how he couldn't wait to see her, how she was the best thing that ever happened to him. Photos. I clicked one. A picture of her, standing in a mirror, wearing my husband's shirt. I scrolled. Another one. This time of them, at a fancy restaurant. The same restaurant he had taken her to in Paris. I scrolled faster, my vision blurring. And then, a message from him, just this morning. I hate sneaking around like this. I wish I could just be with you. I felt something snap inside me. You son of a bead. He exhaled through his nose, his hands still clenched. Just stop, okay? Let's talk about this like adults. I looked up at him, shaking with rage. Like adults? Like adults. Are you FNG kidding me? Then, before I could think about it, before I could stop myself, I called her. His eyes went wide. No! He lunged, but I dodged him again, stepping back as the phone rang. One ring. 2. 3. Then, hey, baby. What's wrong? Are you okay? Her voice was soft, concerned. She had no idea. I smiled, but it wasn't friendly. Hi, sweetie, I said, my voice dripping with venom. Guess what? He's married. Silence. I could feel him standing behind me, his whole body radiating panic. What? She stammered. Yeah, married. For 15 FNG years. And guess what else? You know that luxury trip to Paris? Yeah, he paid for it with my money. I heard her inhale sharply. Then, you're lying. I barked out a laugh. Oh, honey. I wish I was. But I'm looking at your messages right now. The ones where he tells you he hates sneaking around. The ones where he calls you the love of his life. The ones where you're standing in my husband's shirt. Silence. Then, a quiet, broken whisper. Oh my God. I was about to say more when click. She hung up. And that's when he lost it. What the F is wrong with you? He exploded, his face twisted in rage. I turned to him slowly. Me? I said, tilting my head. You're really gonna stand there and act like I'm the problem. His whole body was shaking. You had no right. No right. I screamed. No right. You lied to me for years. You took another woman on a vacation that you told me we could never afford. And now you're mad because I told her the FNG truth. He was breathing heavily, his chest rising and falling fast. He opened his mouth, but before he could say another word, his phone buzzed. I looked down. It was her. I snatched the phone and read the message. You FNG liar. Don't ever speak to me again. I grinned and turned the phone around, showing him the screen. Looks like you just lost both of us. He stood there, his entire world crumbling in real time. And I had never felt stronger. He just stood there. His face was frozen in shock, his whole body tense like a coiled spring. His mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. For the first time that night, I saw something new in his eyes. Not just anger. Not just guilt. Fear. Because he knew. He had lost control. Everything he thought he could manipulate, his lies, his double life, his neatly contained little fantasy, had just exploded in his face. I held up his phone again, tilting it so he could see the screen. You FNG liar. Don't ever speak to me again. I watched his expression shift, watched his lips press into a thin, pale line. He wasn't just losing me. He was losing her too. The silence stretched between us, thick and suffocating. Then he did something that made my skin crawl. He laughed. Not a normal laugh. Not even an embarrassed, nervous one. It was bitter. Ugly. The sound of a man who had just realized he was completely, utterly effed. Wow, he said, shaking his head. You really just destroyed everything, huh? I let out a sharp breath, disbelief crashing over me in waves. I destroyed everything? He looked up, his face twisting with resentment. Yeah. You. You just couldn't let it go, could you? You had to ruin my relationship with her. You had to humiliate me. I stared at him. I actually felt myself swaying, like my body couldn't decide whether to launch across the table and claw his eyes out or just collapse from exhaustion. Your relationship? I repeated, my voice eerily calm. The one you built while you were still married to me? His jaw clenched. It wasn't like that. I slammed my hands on the table so hard the dishes rattled. It was exactly like that. He flinched. But I didn't care anymore. The leash had snapped. You lied to me for years. You told me we were broke. You told me I was asking for too much. You made me feel like I was selfish just for wanting a vacation. I sucked in a shaky breath, my throat burning. And the whole time, you were living a whole other life behind my back. His eyes flickered with something I couldn't place. Guilt? Maybe. But mostly it was frustration. Because he still didn't think he had done anything wrong. Look, he dragged a hand down his face. It wasn't supposed to be like this, okay? I wasn't God. I wasn't trying to hurt you. I laughed. A hollow, exhausted laugh. Oh, you weren't trying to hurt me? Well, congrats, because you still FING did. His face darkened. He stopped himself, running a hand through his hair. I just needed something different. That was it. That was all he had to say. Not an apology. Not even an attempt to make it right. Just that. Something inside me snapped. You know what? I said, my voice shaking. I don't give AF what you needed. Because guess what? I needed things too. I stepped closer, my hands curling into fists. I needed a husband who didn't lie to me. I needed a partner who didn't make me feel like I was asking for too much just by wanting a little happiness. I needed someone who respected me enough not to spend MY money on some other woman. His breathing was heavy now, his whole body rigid. I F it up, okay? What else do you want me to say? Nothing, I said, stepping back. My voice was eerily steady now. I don't want anything from you anymore. And I meant it. For the first time since this whole nightmare started, I actually felt it. This was over. Not just the argument. Not just the betrayal. Us. Everything we had built, everything I had spent 15 years believing in, was already dead. I just hadn't buried it yet. He must have seen it in my face, because his expression changed. The anger melted away. And for the first time I saw fear. Real, sinking, gut-wrenching fear. Wait, he said quickly, stepping forward. Don't do this. We can fix it. I let out a slow breath. No, we can't. His eyes searched mine, desperate. Baby, don't, I cut him off. Don't call me that. Don't act like you care. You made your choice. Now live with it. His mouth opened, then snapped shut. Because he knew. He had lost me. I packed a bag that night. Just the essentials. My heart was pounding the entire time, but I didn't let myself hesitate. I didn't let myself think. He followed me around the house, his voice jumping between anger, desperation, and pathetic attempts at manipulation. Where are you even gonna go? You're overreacting. You're really gonna throw away 15 years over one mistake? I ignored him. I grabbed my keys, slung my bag over my shoulder, and walked out. I didn't cry. Not then. Not even when I got in my car and drove away. Not even when I pulled into my best friend's driveway and sat there, gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles ached. The tears didn't come until I was inside, until my friend wrapped me in a hug and whispered, "I've got you." Then I broke. The divorce was messy. Of course it was. He tried everything, apologizing, blaming me, acting like the victim. He even tried to spin it like I had ruined his life. But the truth was, he had ruined his own. I found out later that his mistress, the one he had taken to Paris, had blocked him completely. She wanted nothing to do with him after she found out about me. He lost everything. And honestly, I felt nothing. No pity. No regret. Just nothing. Because the man I thought I loved, the man I built my life with, he never existed. I spent so many years sacrificing my happiness for someone who didn't deserve it. I spent so many nights doubting myself, believing I was asking for too much when all I wanted was to be treated like I mattered. But I do matter. And now I get to start over. I booked my own damn trip to Paris. I paid for it myself. And when I stood at the top of the Eiffel Tower, feeling the wind against my face, looking out over the city that he once used to break my heart, I smiled. Because this time, it was mine.